I want Gloria to introduce this next song. I think maybe some of you folks have heard her tell this little thing before, but I think it's worth repeating. Besides, honey, I love to hear you talk.
Not what you said this morning.
She just said, that's not what you said this morning. She's a sweetheart, and I really mean that. She'd have to be to live with me.
Amen.
Gloria just said he doesn't say much, but what he says makes sense. Tell them about that, honey.
We have a little girl named Suzanne. She may have been here last time we were here. She was one of those kids that never was afraid of anything in her whole life. She just didn't really have good sense, I guess, when she was born, and she didn't understand that there are some things in this world that you had to be afraid of, and normal kids know that right away, but she had to be taught, and we're still working on it. I remember one time when she was playing out in the yard, she was about 2.5. She brought in she said it was her friend she wanted me to meet. And she held out her little hand, and in it was the strangest looking worm I had ever seen in my life. I thought I knew a lot about insects, but this one was a new one to me. It was about this long and about this big around, and except for the stripes it had on it, it looked pretty much like a night crawler. So I asked her where she got the thing, and she said she found it out in the garden, and they'd been sliding down the slide and swinging in the swing, and she said she'd buried it a few times in the sandbox, and they'd just been having every bit of fun. So I began to look at her little hands, and they were just covered with little short, black, bristly hairs. And that's when it first dawned on me that what she had once been a woolly worm, but the woolly was all gone. And I don't know if you've ever seen a naked woolly worm or not, but did you know that the skin underneath is striped like the fuzz? And you know, when the fuzz is gone, it's really, they're weird. That's all. They're just...
I can't wait to see one, honey.
I remember another time we live up on a hill, and we have a creek down in front of our house, and she chased a snake down the hill, and she won. And she brought him in. Fortunately, it wasn't a water moccasin or anything dangerous. It was just a harmless garter snake, but I suppose he'd been all the same if it had been. Her grandma took her to Stephen Foster's old Kentucky home. I don't know if you've ever been there or not, but in the center of the main building, there is a spiral staircase that goes up 2, 3, 4 stories right in the middle of the building. And when her grandmother brought her in the back door to bring her home, she was still shaking because she said she had caught Suzanne by the skirt tail just as she was about to leap off of the top, of the very top of the spiral staircase down through the middle, thoroughly convinced with that much of a head start she could fly by the time she got to the bottom. So we thought we were really fortunate when we got her to the ripe old age of 4 and took her to a church in Wichita, Kansas one night to sing. And this church had built a new sanctuary and had put marble staircases going up into the sanctuary. And each one had a round banister, freestanding banister, and she thought that'd be a good place to turn somersaults like she does on the top of her swing set. And I mean the top of her swing set. She doesn't have monkey bars, so she unhooks the swings at the top and uses that. So anyway, she tried that on those banisters, and she didn't count the cost. And when she came over, she whopped her head right at the base of her skull on one of those marble steps. And a great big old knot welled up there, half big enough to put her hat on. And I stewed and fretted and worried and put ice packs on the bump and tried to tell her that she could have brain damage for doing such a silly thing. And finally, we kept her up till midnight. I was afraid to put her to sleep. I was so sure she had a brain concussion. But finally, at midnight, she didn't act any more abnormal than normal. So I put her to bed in the motel. And She went to sleep, and the next morning she got up and began jumping up and down in the middle of her bed and kind of looked over at me and grinned, and she said, "Well, Mom, your kid survived." And then in one of those tender, precious moments I know every mother treasures, she snuggled up real close to me and she said, "I know why. I heard you praying for me." And so often I've thought about the bigger dangers, the things that come later on, things more important than woolly worms and staircases, foolish miscalculations and too quick decisions that can ruin an adolescent life. And so often I've thought about the times when my own parents probably spent the night on their knees while I was gone. And when I see the kind of world that little Benji is going to grow up in, I sometimes wonder how we can ever see our children to any kind of spiritual maturity without having them permanently maimed by evil. But Jesus said, "I have prayed for thee." And if he cared about his children, I think he cares about ours too. And I claim that promise every day I live for our little ones. There isn't a day that goes by when they turn their innocent little faces up at me and wait for my answers to their questions. Questions that already are getting bigger and more profound. That I don't say, "Oh God, make me big enough to be the one to give them the answers and make those answers count." I've been talking about an empty tomb. And if it were not for that empty tomb and a risen Lord, I don't think I'd have the courage to bring a little child into this world, much less look them in the face. But this thing of serving Jesus, betting everything you have and are on a way beyond proof, really works. And it gives me the courage to look those little babies in the face and say, because he lives, we can face tomorrow. Because he lives, all fear is gone. Because I know he holds the future, then life is worth the living, just because he lives.
How sweet to hold our newborn baby and feel the pride and joy that he gives, but greater still, the calm assurance our child can face uncertain days because he lives. Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Because he lives, all fear is gone. Because I know
that river.
I'll cross that river.
I'll fight life's final war with
I'll fight life's final war with pain.
And then as death gives way to victory.
And then as death gives way to victory,
I'll see the lights of glory.
I'll see the lights of glory,
And I'll know
He reigns.
because he lives, I can face tomorrow.
Because He lives, I can face tomorrow. Because He lives, all fear is gone. Because I know He holds the future, and life is worth the living just because He lives. Now life is worth the living just because He
I tell you what, 10 years ago we started writing, and we started traveling, and we started singing, and started recording and telling folks with all the power that we knew that Jesus Christ was the Son of God, that He died on the cross. On the third day He arose. And because He arose, friend, that's the reason we can have the kind of joy and the love and the harmony. There are Baptists, Methodists, Nazarenes, Mennonites, Catholics, everybody here tonight who just simply love the Lord because of that day at Calvary. Thank the Lord. I want to sing that chorus again, and I want you to help us sing it. And in the morning, this is when we celebrate this whole thing, and I just don't think Christians celebrate enough. And brother, we got something to really celebrate, so I want you to sing that chorus with us. Because He lives, I can face tomorrow.
I can face tomorrow because He lives.
All fear is gone.
All fear is gone because I know He holds the future.
And life
And life is worth the living just because He lives. Now life is worth the living just because He lives. Get all excited, go tell everybody that Jesus Christ is King. I said to get all excited, go tell everybody that Jesus Christ is King. Oh well, get all excited, go tell everybody that Jesus Christ is King.